Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Ambitious Dads podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Hittner. After more than 200 conversations with fathers, I have realized we're just not talking enough. Not about our fears, nor our ambitions, but we're not talking about how our kids are really doing or how we're holding up in the middle of all of this. This podcast is for all the dads trying to build something meaningful and be present at home. The ones carrying a lot, questioning if they're doing enough, and craving honest conversations without the filters. If that's you, you're not alone. You're in the right place. Let's figure this out together. And today, I'm talking with a leadership consultant and coach, James Boddy, whose purpose is to spark the conversations and change that really matters. Originally from the UK, and I think you'll get that from his accent, he now lives in the US. He's a former employment law barrister turned company director, Harvard-trained expert in adult development psychology, and an ICF professional certified coach. But most importantly, he is a father to two children, 12 and 8 years old. So James, it is great to have you here.
Thank you, Jeff. Really happy to be here. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we were talking before we got started today, and I would just love to hear, so you're the managing director of your firm, and so I imagine the work-life balance challenge is particularly front and center for you on a regular basis. What are some of the things you feel like you've gotten right in trying to balance this kind of impossible task of balancing these things that are obviously both really important to you? And what are some of the things that you feel like you still, need a lot of work on? Maybe start with the positive ones first.
Wow, those are big questions. Maybe I'll just take a little detour to start, maybe.
Please.
When you said the Ambitious Dad podcast and welcome Ambitious Dad, James, I noticed there's a little trigger for myself. There's something around the word ambitious and my relationship with that. And I think this detour is going to get us back to your question because...
detours are always welcome.
Yeah. If I feel like I've been on a journey of starting to acknowledge and really own my ambition. And rather than that having that be something that just plays out under the surface and kind of makes me tense, and I'm trying to be a present dad, but I'm sort of trying to do well and get ahead, but I'm not really acknowledging that, etc. I feel as though I'm moving to a place where I was like, yeah, I am ambitious. I want to have an impact in the world. I want to try stuff out. I want to see what I can do. And I also want to be a present dad and a present husband. And I know enough that I don't want to trade off the one for the other. So I am in that lived inquiry of, and how does that both happen?
Let me ask you something based on that. So you said you're a little triggered by it at the beginning. Does that mean that for a while, at least maybe internally to you, the idea of being ambitious at work gave you guilt? Was there a negative feeling that you had associated with it? Or is it just you weren't able to kind of speak, or why weren't you able to really speak, yes, I want both of these things and I want them in large quantities?
Yeah, I mean, this is just, I guess, my psychology, right? And my upbringing and background. And I definitely have an association with the word ambitious of not good. It's an association. I imagine a sort of sharp-nosed, hungry kind of figure, kind of like going after stuff, and not really caring at what expense. Who kind of gets hurt along the way. Like, I'm exaggerating, of course, but there's definitely that kind of association.
Sure.
I mean, where I'm coming to now, it's like, there's a very natural part of me, I think of many people, which is to say, I want to show up in the world in a way where I can have impact. And like I'm saying, I don't want to do that at the expense of My so when I grew up, I remember having conversations with my dad, and he said to me, he sat me down at one point. I must have been probably a young teenager, and he said, "Look, there's 7 or 8 jobs which you should be aiming for." I was growing up in the UK, so ready for these jobs. I won't remember all of them, but Prime Minister of the UK, Lord Chief Justice, the Chief Judge in the UK, Head of the Civil Service, Archbishop of Canterbury. There were a few more. So I kind of had that. That was my, I guess, received messaging was it's important to really go for that. And then I guess, you sort of get into the world, and I was a barrister, and in some ways I was on that track to becoming a politician or a chief judge. And, I went to law school, ended up in the chambers that Tony Blair had been a part of. So there was that sort of track ahead of me. But as that unfolded through my 20s, more and more I was like, yeah, but this isn't me. This starts to feel like someone else's pattern or story. So how can so I think, my journey since then has really been about, what's my story in that? What's my authentic relationship with that? And that was part of my reason for making the shift from being a lawyer and a barrister into the world of human development and people development, and which has just felt much more on purpose for me and much more, much more authentic, much more territory I'd like to make a contribution.
I can resonate with that completely. So I'm then imagining, you shift career directions, you focus in the direction of human development, and then, you're building a new sort of career, and then you start your family. So did those sort of, how did it feel to run into that challenge between those two passions all of a sudden, where, as I hear you talking about a little bit of the negative association with ambition and this external world, and then but then you found an area of focus that you feel is a meaningful place to put that focus, and then you start your family, and then how did the love kind of on both sides play out for you, first in the early years, and what have you learned about that since?
Yeah, it's so, again, some of my own stories. So when I had stopped being a lawyer, before I kind of fully transitioned into this world of human development, that was when I met my wife. I was traveling. And so we got to know each other, and we built a relationship when I was in this very exciting transitionary period. But it was also a period when I was earning very little money, and I was really trying to figure stuff out again. And I was at home a lot and present a lot. So then, reality started to dawn, and I realized actually earning money is pretty important, and not just a sort of, for me at least, the basics that you need to get by. But I was like, actually, no, I would like to have a certain quality of life. And so family to my daughter was born 12 years ago. And that, of course, was a big shift, in terms of that feeling of, and now it's not just about me and my wife and actually what kind of standard of living we want. It's like, wow, I have this awesome responsibility all of a sudden. In fact, I remember that. I'm sure you relate, Jeff. That moment when my daughter was born and was kind of, I had her on my chest in the hospital. And I was just like, wow, this is the moment when, and talk about purpose. Sure, I want to make an impact in the world and do these things, but this is a fundamental part of my purpose now. Sort of fast forward, I'd moved to the US. I'd connected with a company that I'm now the MD of. And, we're a small firm. It's very entrepreneurial. It has to be. We're about 20 people now, but when I took on the role 6 years ago, we were more like 10 people. It just became really clear, like no one was just going to hand out money or sustainable living to me or to us. Like I had to lead for it and galvanize the team and make it possible. So, at times that has definitely meant doing things I wouldn't really have wanted to do in terms of that pair of balance. Like I remember when my son was born, so he's now 8. So he's born back in 2017. And I had just played a big part in bringing a really interesting new client into our system. And it wasn't just a really interesting new client, it was a really interesting new type of work. We were helping a big corporation articulate and then activate a purpose statement across the whole organization, which for me was like so interesting and work I really wanted to do. But the kickoff conference with their top 100 leaders happened, I think it was a week after my son was born. And so, that was really a choice moment. And I was like, this does feel important to me and it feels important to the family. And so I'm going to be there. And I know my wife wasn't particularly happy about that. It wasn't quite, filling out a legal brief while being about to give birth, as one of my legal coaching clients once described to me. That was a different level of, kind of commitment to work, but it still felt, a choice I had to make. I don't know if I'd made that choice again, looking back. I think I was a bit too like, oh, this is the opportunity, and if I don't seize it, another one won't come along. I think in hindsight, other people could have been there and it would still have all been fine, and other opportunities have unfolded.
What do you think makes us, I hear that often from the dads that I've interviewed, that they've made a work like family decision that leaned towards work in a particular moment where there was important things happening in both worlds. And looking back on it, they thought to themselves, I didn't need to make that particular decision. What is it about, like, fast forwarding 10 or 12 years that makes that possible? Is it just the maturity of being a parent and being a leader, or is there some other thing that you've learned along the way that that makes you see it differently now?
Yeah, it's a great question. Time in role helps, right?
Sure.
And I think with that, there definitely is learning and maturity and growth which comes along the way. So yeah, just for example, started to go, it is important to go after opportunities at work, and other opportunities come, and that's sort of a trusting in. I'm lucky enough that, the business I'm now leading is doing really well. It has been doing well for the last 3-4 years. Back in 2018, we weren't doing so well. We were really looking for that next client. And so I think that definitely helps a lot as well. Like when there is a bit more sort of inbuilt sustainability in the business you're leading, or the livelihood you're going after.
And as someone that's, now gone through that experience and has been leading your company for 6+ years, how do you culturally share that new understanding and maturity? Like, you don't necessarily have someone, that's where you were 8 years ago when this happened and they need to make that decision, but are you doing anything culturally to ensure that it's like easier for people to make the family decision over the work decision, or vice versa if they want to?
So, I mean, as a company, we have several policies in place just intended to really land the message that the and is not just possible, but is a good thing to go after. So we have like a flexible 4-day work week. We call it 80% time. So we're really encouraging people to see their family life as not just a good thing to kind of squeeze around the edges of work, but like actually if you can find this way of balance, it's going to reflect back in your work because you're going to be more stable and more fulfilled. And
But beyond policy, how do you we lead through action, right? We lead through example. So I'm just curious because this is what a lot of dads that I have interviewed, we all have these strong beliefs now about wanting to drive a culture that's as much about like your family as it is about the culture at work. And that means setting different examples in different ways, right? How do you think about that in terms of setting an example on it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, the policies help, but I mean, ultimately, particularly in my role as MD, people do look and see, well, what choices are you making? And we're in a unique time in our company's growth at the moment where it feels like the next kind of big growth period is just ahead of us. We've just made a decision to bring on 3 new team members, and when you're a small business, that's overhead. And what's our confidence in really being able to not just meet that overhead, but also that's going to drive the growth, etc. So I do feel like I'm in a moment of I'm having to lean back into that kind of almost like the ambitious kind of let's drive something at work energy. So we're just before the Thanksgiving break here. I've had as I was saying at the start, I've come off the back of a pretty intense travel period this last 2 months. So I'm taking the Thanksgiving break off. And thankfully December looks a bit quieter. So I'm going to really make sure I'm taking that time for myself to rebalance, just for my own kind of well-being, but also the family's being part of that. But also kind of let people know that that's in the team. That's the way I think we will find the balances. Sure, when it's busy, go for it. That's important. And ambition is no longer a dirty word for me, and it's not a dirty word for the team. And there's kind of is a sense of if we want to go after something meaningful, there is a sleaze rolling up. Let's put some real discretionary effort into that. Some intelligence, like not just working blindly, but let's hold a bigger context for what's possible. And in the visioning we did with the team, we really looked at how do we want to hold that ambition with the sort of quality of life and the work-life harmony that we've been looking to lead for in the team. And in fact, we deliberately chose that term work-life harmony rather than work-life balance.
Yes.
So trying to how can we have this not be a trade-off, but something which works holistically together? I feel right in the midst of all this right now. I mean, maybe I always will,
No, I love that. And, some fathers and leaders that I've spoken to said that when they talk about goals for their team, they even ask like personal goals, right? Like how, you're at this company or you're at this organization, like what do you want for yourself with your family so that I can know that and be as supportive of that as I am with the goals we have at work? Is that some of the stuff you guys also explore?
Absolutely. Yeah. We have, we have a me, us, it model that informs most of our client work and also the way we work internally as a team. So the it is the business. Yes, that matters. Let's go after some stuff. Let's have an impact. The us is our partnerships and relationships within the team, and the real recognition that the stronger those relationships and partnership can be, the more likely we are to have success in the business. But then for us to show up really effectively for our colleagues, for the us, the me, it matters so much, which is our personal resourcefulness, like how we can show up at our best more of the time, more regularly, which is about our ability to spot triggers and our ability to spot patterns and narratives and stories we tell, and actually how can we bring more reality into that and make healthier choices. And because that all relates to our brain chemistry, right? Showing up in a way which has balance personally really matters. So the quality of your sleep matters. The quality of your human relationships matter. The quality of your relationships with your family and your kids, if you have them, really matters. So we regularly check in around that as a team. In fact, we've people who are joining our team from kind of externally. The first few meetings, they think, what on earth are you doing? Why are you spending, 20 minutes of this 1 hour call? Not just sort of quickly sharing how your weekend was, but, actually starting to share, this is hard. My partner has been ill and this is what that's meaning for me, for example. Pretty quickly, they start to really enjoy it. It just feels quite countercultural from much more traditional kind of hierarchical, dominance-based employment systems.
No, I love that. And I love that you share that, because part of the reason that it's unexpected is because people think they need to be two very different people at work and at home. And I know both you and I know better than that if we want to get the most out of the folks that we collaborate with. And I don't just mean from a productivity standpoint, but from like just like a support and authenticity and all the great stuff that come out of us as human beings. We need to feel whole wherever we are, right? Not just at home. So thank you for sharing that. I want to dive into a couple of other comments you made in there around triggers, which we've had a couple of people talk about triggers, but I know in particular you've spent some time kind of noticing like your experience with overreacting to stuff your kids do, and then trying to kind of walk back and discover, like, what are you kind of reliving from your childhood. And can you just talk a little bit about your experience in trying to grow and heal yourself in that way? Because I think it's a beautiful example for a lot of dads out there.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I mean, the more you see of this, the more you look into yourself and you start to notice your patterns, the more you realize how unconsciously they're playing out just again and again and again. So recently, actually, my wife and I have been going to couples therapy. Thankfully, not because we're at a sort of crisis moment in our relationship, but because I think we've both seen that kids are getting older, their lives are more and more busy. Soccer practice is a busy thing in the States, and you're trying to and you're there, and then, then there's dance, and then there's this, and my wife has also been getting quite busy in her work, and we started to see that more and more we were kind of getting that place of like, I guess, kind of still walking alongside each other, but like not facing into each other while doing that, or not holding our hands while doing that, or whatever the right imagery is. So we intentionally said, well, let's spend some time really looking at that, and let's see what's going on. And actually, I found that some of the most impactful therapy I've ever done. Something about not just being myself and the therapist, but having the three of us and having someone who knows me really well able to kind of ask questions and be a bit of a mirror. So I think I've seen things that I hadn't seen before, even after, I guess 15 odd years of quite intentionally being on a self-development journey. One of the things that I saw through this was like a really deep lying pattern, which is essentially a part of me that is saying, am I all right? Am I okay? Am I loved? Am I welcomed? And like just a core kind of question about that, like a doubt, and therefore like needing to kind of ask that question. And of course, I won't go into all the details, but of course, that's a really early childhood message. I grew up with a dad who was very loving and not present in the house very much. He was working a lot. He had other things outside work too. And as a result, my mum was, found it very hard to bring up. I have two brothers. We're all similar in age. We must have been having two kids now. I'm like, oh my God. We were three boys just charging around the house, and she was trying to navigate it all. Understandably, she wasn't always as present to me as I would have liked her to be as a young child. And I think some of that really early imprinting was, am I okay? Am I all right? And basically, do you love me? Do you accept me or not? Is the underlying message. So sort of fast forward, I'm 45 now. You'd think that kind of core childhood message wouldn't be showing up in my life anymore. But of course it does, because if it's happening under the surface of the water, like, if you imagine the iceberg, like deep in the base of the iceberg, of course it shows up in some of my behavior. So in client work, for example, I still notice there's a part of me which is like wanting to kind of check in with the client. Was that all right? Did that go well? Did that meet your approval? Do you love me? And of course, feedback is a good thing. Like actually checking in, has this work met your expectations? Sure, let's have that conversation. Yeah. But if it's being driven by this kind of core energy, which is, really kind of wanting you to like me, that's not really me showing up in the really adult to adult way that I want to show up in partnership with my clients. And of course, it also can limit some of my effectiveness as a coach and a consultant. Because if really where I'm coming from is a please like me kind of place, then it's much harder to be a real mirror. And it's much harder to have the harder conversations with the client, which have the risk of, maybe you won't like me. Of course, what in reality happens is the more I show up as in an adult to adult way, and I'm able to be a mirror and I'm able to have harder conversations, the deeper the work goes. Ironically, the more the client does like me, but that's the journey. And that same pattern shows up then in particularly my relationship with my wife. And hey, are you still here with me? Are you still here with me? Do you like me still? And I haven't really unpacked this yet, but I'm sure it shows up in my relationship with my kids too. Maybe around, the moments when it's important to actually kind of set clear boundaries for the kids. that will be one pattern in that. So yeah, I mean, it's a long old answer to your question, but that for me, that work of starting to notice like these really underlying patterns that drive behavior really, really helps, in many dimensions.
Thank you for sharing all that. And, also you work from home when you're not traveling, right?
Sure.
And so you don't have the benefit of benefit is in quotes, right? A 20-minute commute to sort of decompress from one hat to another. How have you worked on that over the years, particularly in such a high stress role, like being, head of the company at one moment, walking down the stairs, and then your dad and husband in the next moment. How does that play out for you?
Yeah, that I still find challenging. I never thought I would say I missed the London tube commute, squeezed in, someone's armpit. Actually, I'm tall, so normally they would squeeze into my armpit, I guess. But, yeah, I do find that kind of jarring, that shift from, and particularly if it's a long day at work and I'm trying to get something finished because I know that, I want to be down at 6 for dinner time and be there with the kids. And of course, as the day gets longer, my wife's like more and more like, hey, I could really do with some help right now. And so, at my best, I'm able to take a breath, kind of park the day and sort of tap into actually the energy of excitement actually about, oh, there's something different here. And the kids are down there and this will be fun. And as the kids get older, that's sort of in some ways that more accessible, that kind of excitement about, sounds terrible, like real human beings downstairs you can be in a relationship with. And at my worst, or maybe not at my worst, but when I'm not at my best, I'm carrying all the energy of the day. I'm carrying the stress of a day. I'm heading downstairs. And the kitchen's a mess, and the kids are demanding, and my wife's unhappy, and I'm just like, and of course, those are the moments when those patterns play out. Another pattern I've been tuning into is the sort of the part of me that's quite sensitive to criticism, and perceives, even quite neutral comments as in some ways like directed at me and I'm not good enough kind of part. So yeah, that part can really show up, in those moments. And I will say that one thing that helps when I am at my desk and I've had a long day and sort of back-to-back calls, if I can like carve some time out in the afternoon to take a walk, that really helps. It's the sort of middle of the afternoon where it's always a bit of a slump energetically anyway. So just the act of moving your body, getting some fresh air. We often I'll take the dog for a walk as part of that, or sometimes just myself. Sometimes a chance to listen to music or a podcast. Sometimes just to be with myself. That helps a lot of that processing, and then I can show up more at my best in those moments.
Interesting. So instead of necessarily having like a ritual, like right when you like close your laptop and walk downstairs, you're saying you have a bit of a ritual when there's a little bit more space, maybe earlier in the afternoon, and that is actually helping you be better at transitioning later in the day. Oh, that's great to know.
I mean, you know this, Jeff, but the body mind connection is so strong, so, and it all is physiological. And so the extent to which I can exercise and move my body, and I also like to ride a bike, and, that also really helps if I can carve the time out for, more vigorous exercise. That's great. But just even the act of kind of taking a walk, the kind of rhythm of it, I find it helps my thoughts. It definitely shifts the place I'm coming from physiologically. I have more access to resourcefulness, which means I have a better chance of showing up in the way I want to.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit more about self-care? You mentioned a little, and I think that walk is a mix of both self-care and as we were just talking about, like helps with the transition. But I know you mentioned you also you cycle, and like, what was that experience like? You have you work hard, so you don't have a lot of spare time, right? And then you've got to take that time from somewhere to do the self-care, to go cycling, to do. So walk us through like your sort of mental conversation about giving yourself the I don't know what the right permission to focus on yourself, even though it means a little bit less out of either of the things that you love dearly, your work and your family,
Yeah.
and kind of how and why you make that decision.
Yeah. It's I've definitely been on a journey with this. Theoretically, I've known since I was a teenager about the importance of exercise, particularly in my 20s when I was a lawyer, and then my 30s, it was, I should exercise more, and I feel good when I do. So informationally, I had all the information. That was not the problem. It always felt hard for me to kind of translate that information into like a regular daily practice or like a disciplined kind of, 3 mornings a week I'll get up and go to the gym type of thing. And there's reasons for that, which I don't need to particularly get into here, but maybe this is part of the sort of maturing, you were describing. But what I've seen more and more now is, even if it's not a sort of, on Monday morning, at this time I do this, and on Wednesday morning at this time I do that, really acknowledging and feeling in myself the difference that it makes. That feeling makes all the difference, and it feels more integrated now.
Do you need to communicate that as well to your wife, who may be like, what do you think you're doing? I need your help for this. Or your kids, hey, daddy, I want to play with you, that sort of thing. How does that play out?
Yeah, I mean, actually, my wife's really good at saying, hey, you should go for a bike ride now. He does say, I wish your bike rides weren't like 2 hours long. Can you do why are you running instead? Because in running, you could be 30 minutes.
You tire more quickly.
Point is, it is 2 hours. Yeah. I always say, well, I could play golf, think about that. So, I think just really kind of knowing in myself, like this isn't just a sort of a nice to have thing, which then typically does get, because if you got this trade-off, it's like work, kids, relationship, me and my friends, and exercise. There's probably more on that list as well. Exercise gets quickly dropped from that list. Me and my friends gets quickly dropped from that list. And then you've kind of got, and also the relationship quickly gets dropped from that list. And so you kind of end up with work and kids. That's probably a pretty common pattern, I think, for lots of people.
Yeah.
But then if I do have all this focus on work and I want to get ahead and I want to do something that matters, in that domain, and I really care about my kids and I care about showing up in the best way that I can as a dad. If I don't pay attention to these other three things, I am diminishing my impacts in those two domains I really care about, of the work and the parenting. So just kind of starting to realize that it's not really an optional thing. Particularly as I'm getting a little older, I start to feel that some more. There is always choices to be made, and maybe the 2-hour bike ride becomes a 1-hour bike ride and I just go super hard. But that is going to help me in that window I have with my kids, not be super stressed and reactive, but be more in the way I want to, and more present. And it's without doubt an investment that pays off.
What is, thank you for sharing that as well. I think it's really interesting for people to be thinking about, like, at least we have that list of 5 things that you talk through, and those 2 aren't gonna, the 2 that you choose to focus on are gonna be actually worse, not better, if you're not paying attention to being healthy around the other 3. When it comes to your children in particular, what are one of the areas that you've sort of feel like you've grown the most, and how did that come about?
Yeah. the thing that I'm tuning into as most important with my kids and my parenting is the ability to be really present with them. So yeah, it's fun to do. Let's go and do an activity. Let's try and sort of bring something into the relationship that will make it exciting and memorable. But actually, I don't think that really is the things the kids are wanting. And it's not really what I'm wanting either. So it's like I think of it as almost like as a breathing out kind of moment. And particularly if I also have a script running, which is, this is going on at work and I'm kind of stressed and I haven't got much time, and just really trying to breathe through that effectively. And so, making the time to kind of just hang out, play Lego with my son, or kind of get really interested in these incredible creations he's making. He's recently got into the Nerf gun kind of world.
Because I'm sure some aunt, cousin, someone that's not you bought it for him.
Yes, exactly. That exactly happened. That he inherited from some people who were moving town. They were like, my older son, he's got a few Nerfs. Maybe your son would like to have them. Sure. This turned out to be like a Nerf arsenal. Just like, cool. But like, if I kind of get into Zach's shoes, like where he's come from, this is just so exciting. Like, he's got all these different things and some of them work and there's different, and so can I kind of put myself back in the excitement of like almost being an 8-year-old boy again, and but like really meeting him there. So yeah, that feels like a shift for me. And it's, it's like, I guess it's part of that shift of kind of being comfortable in your own skin. And maybe this comes back to the ambitious thing. Like if ambition means like grasping, trying to get something you don't have, then you're not really comfortable in your skin. Like you're always trying to kind of reach out for more. But maybe there's a different way of thinking about ambition, which is, it's not about that thing I haven't got that I want to get. It's like, it's the sort of allowing the natural unfolding of what's in me. So it's almost like from here inside kind of going out rather than from out to in.
I really appreciate that, because I think about, the hundreds of dads I've spoken to, and, each one has a different, just gauge of like how much they, want to be day in and day out with their kids all the time versus, what their sort of internal motor is telling them about their focus on work versus their focus on their kids versus, and everyone's a little bit different, right? I mean, as would be no surprise, since I'm doing all this ambitious dad work, I mean, I would be 100% content to be, well, let's just say like 80% focused on my kids and 20% focused on work. And I think other people who are honest with where their like ambitions are bubbling up, it might be the other way, right? And then we've got a balance for family expectations, cultural expectations, and needs, right? Our own needs, our kids' needs, our partner's needs. So it's constantly, as you were talking before, it's not about a balance so much as a harmony. But I love this idea of like when we do get in touch with ourselves more deeply, we really start to see what is calling us in terms of like how we're engaging, how much we're engaging, and where we're engaging our time. And I also appreciated that you talk about presence, because a lot of fathers that I've spoken to, have reiterated this truth, which is it's not about the hours logged in front of our children, but that when we are in front of them, they feel our presence and our connection in a way that like there makes no doubt in their mind that you are there to love them and engage with them. And that's really important. So thank you. Really appreciate this conversation.
Likewise. Well, thanks for asking all the questions.
Well, my pleasure.
Process for myself, like, oh yeah, that's what I think.
Well, I do the best I can. So thank you so much, James. It's been a pleasure hosting you. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we can speak again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff. Yeah, really enjoyed this.